Folks, the markets have just given up nearly all their gains. The only index in the green is the Russell, on track to hit an all-time record and close there. We see some dissipation of all that excitement over the president's tax plan. Maybe it's just sell on the news. Because, look, in advance of the news, we saw two major days of big gains. Today's closer has three stocks he thinks, regardless of what happens at the final trade here, that they will rally if the White House proposal passes. Let me bring in Jeff Reeves. He's executive editor of InvestorPlace.com. I don't know what happened. Give me a macro picture as to why we're losing all the gains right now.
Well, I mean, I don't think you can pin it on one thing necessarily. I think the markets kind of had this 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It could be, like you said, a little bit of sell the news going on. But ultimately, I think, look where we were in November, look where we were in January. We are moving higher, but it's kind of irrational. I think the market ever moves in a straight line. I certainly don't think this is the end of the world, even if we've just seen some softness towards the close here.
No, of course not. But the dollar just reversed course. It had hit 4-week highs on the expectation. Now it has just turned negative. And I do want to give this note. It involves the government shutdown that is looming. House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi is saying, quote, they've made progress, this is good news, in negotiations over the government funding bill. More progress is needed, but they've made progress. All right, let me get to these names, because if the Russell is doing well, you could argue that they would be real beneficiaries of a corporate tax rate that's cut down to 15%. What are the names you feel, individual names, that could really benefit?
Well, I think it's really important to look at where companies make their money. I mean, we all know that companies like Apple and Microsoft have hundreds of billions overseas. It's because they book a lot of revenue overseas. You need a domestic company. So the companies I look at all make almost all of their money here at home, and they kind of have a double-edged play on this, on the kind of tax cuts. So the first I would throw out there is Paychex. It's a business service company that services, the payroll departments of American employers, both small and large. If you do want to pay a lower corporate tax rate, there's going to be a lot of smaller businesses that benefit from that. A lot of them use Paychex. Paychex does all of its money, does all of its revenue here in the United States. I think that's a good example of a company that will succeed under a lower tax rate environment compared to where it is right now. I mean, multinationals like GM sells more cars in China than it does in the U.S. You don't want a company like that. Think about a business like Paychex. That's a good example.
Yeah, I think those are great ideas, because when you look at who might benefit in the long run, it could be those three names. I say could because we've got to see Congress embrace this. In the meantime, Dow Jones Industrial's down 8 points. But, Jeff, give us your sense of where you think this goes. Will Congress pass it, not in its current form, but maybe a little bit of change?
Well, I do think the market kind of expects it to, right? I mean, we've seen that. I don't know if healthcare was the right place to start, because the market really did want to see kind of corporate tax reform and regulatory reform, and I think the market expects that. I think voters want to see that. Okay. So I hope it gets done. I really do hope it does. Thank
you, Jeff Reeves. And by the way, no doubt 21,000 today. We're just slightly below it, but this is an all-time record close for the Russell 2000. Let me